Hi everybody, Cheryl and Lady coming to you from the Ladies Garden and Home, and happy Labor Day weekend. It's the beginning of September and I'm going to show you how I am easing my way into the fall. So I hope you join us. So here in my zone, which is 7A, I'm in Southwest Connecticut, we have, I would consider it a moderately long growing season. There's a lot of things that can overwinter here and be perennial. And also the fall is long enough that we usually get a good amount of time to plant some fall harvests. So I'm taking advantage of this beautiful weather that we're having. This month is usually very, very pleasant. I'm going to be direct sowing a bunch of fall crops. In fact, the only ones this year that I am not direct sowing are the brassicas. Those I started back in July. Actually, I started them twice in July. The first time, the seedlings were completely eaten by the white cabbage moths, hence the frost cloth. I've really enjoyed having all of my herbs right outside my kitchen doorstep this year. And well, a couple of flowers, but the basil flowering, it's been really, really lovely in the chives. But soon this basil is going to really start petering out, and I'm probably just going to take big parts of the plant and dry them inside. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start my spinach in here because it's also very nice to have leafy greens when you don't have to bend over and harvest them that way. And so I enjoy doing that. Now I have two different kinds of spinach I'm going to sow. One is called Bloomsdale, which is supposed to be a good fall spinach. But there's also giant winter that I have here, and it's too hot actually to plant this. It will only germinate on days that it's 65 degrees, that's Fahrenheit, or lower. And right now it's in the high 70s, but next week we're going to get a stretch of pretty hot weather in the high 80s to 90s. So I'm not going to plant this yet, but I am going to plant this. And the way I'm going to do that, since I'm not ready to completely take out these basil plants, and also I have some tomato plants here, I'm just going to, using this kitchen spurtle, I'm just going to drop some seeds right in front of the basil plant. And I'm going to do 4 just to make sure I get germination, and then if necessary I will thin them. And I'm going to take care of the weeds while I'm at it. Spinach is one of my favorite vegetables from the garden, and I'm really planning on hopefully having a bunch of spinach plants, which I harvest, cut and come again, just like my lettuce, from the outer leaves in. And because spinach is a cool weather plant, what I'm hoping is that the leaves above are going to shade out some of the sun so they don't get baked so hard. If you've been following me, you know I have a lot of diversity going on in my green stalk. I've got tomatoes, I've got some herbs, I've got lettuce, and what I've been doing, and I think it's been a pretty easy way to do it, is as things have bolted and started going to seed, I've been planting behind them a new crop of lettuce. Or if I've needed to just pull it, I put the seeds in right away. So I'm not doing all of the sowing at once, and I also have more of a timed harvest, which is nice. For example, this little gem lettuce is coming up right behind this oak leaf lettuce that's gone to flower. I've really enjoyed this variety of lettuce. It's performed really well all the way through spring and summer. I never did end up taking down the mini greenhouse from its place here up on the deck. I've just gotten so much used to it throughout the summer, but I wanted to show you what I'm doing in here. I've got my brassicas hardening off, and it's underneath this cloth to keep the the white cabbage moths off. And also, I'm drying these potatoes. And an easy way for me to just start another crop of potatoes is I'm going to take a couple of here seed potatoes to stick back into some of the grow bags that I had planted the original spring crop in, and hopefully get a harvest of some of these kind of smaller but good for making mashed potatoes and roasted potatoes by December. I haven't harvested many of the potatoes yet, although they're obviously very ready, because this is actually a good storage technique to keep them in the grow bags. As long as it doesn't get overly sodden, stays rather dry, you don't really run the risk of them molding or anything or rotting. So I'm just keeping them in here because what I'm going to be planting in most of these bags are my brassicas. And as you can see, they're not ready to go out. And plus it would be too hot for them right now anyway. So these two bags I did harvest from, and I'm just going to put back into here 3 potatoes each, bottom end down. And I don't worry about shitting these because they'll grow pretty quickly. I'll come in and I'll fertilize those later. Don't forget to mark them. I know, plastic knives, but they work, hey. Last year, I learned a what I think was groundbreaking for me as a gardener lesson, which was things that we baby as seedlings inside the house in the late winter, early spring. Sometimes if you just let them do their thing outside, they come back big and better. And one crop in particular was celery. Last year, I let a lot of the celery from the year prior go to seed. This year, I decided to do that with just about 3 plants. And I have gotten so many seeds that I didn't even really need to collect because I collected so many of them last year. So what I've been doing is as they dry out and get brown, I've been sprinkling them on the ground. And I'm centering it in the middle here because I really, that's where I want my celery to grow. I'm going to cover it with a row cover when it gets really cold out to help those seedlings last through the winter. And hopefully I'll get a crop as nice as the crop that I got this year. Here's something I think is very exciting. Dill is a cool season herb, and I had one that went to flower here earlier this summer. And as you can see, I sprinkled a bunch of those seeds, and now I have dill popping up. This fennel has gone to flower, and I did harvest some fronds and dried them to use as an herb, but I'm interested actually in keeping the flowers for fennel seeds. That's something that a lot of people use in cooking, so I'm going to save them for that. But when they dry, I'm going to give a scattering on the ground as well. It's the same thing with the carrots. Now this variety I planted in 2022. It was in the fall, and I planted a Danvers half-long carrot. So it's not a full maturing carrot. It's supposed to mature quicker. Um, and I left a couple of them in and didn't pull them, and now they're starting to drop their seeds. So what I've been doing to make it really easy is I've just been sprinkling in some of my open beds. Now, when you're seeding this heavily, I don't really worry about too much except making sure that it stays watered. If I'm being frank with you, I'm really not that concerned whether or not I get harvestable carrots next year or this fall. What I'm more intending is that those carrots are going to be my cover crop so that the soil doesn't sit barren all winter, exposed to the elements, erosion, and that kind of thing. I did the same thing in this bed when I pulled the carrots that had gone to flower. I had a bunch of those seed heads, and I just dropped them like that here. And that was about a month ago, I would say. And as you can see, I've got some nice looking seedlings here. And I am hoping that I'll be able to get a harvest from these before the winter really sets in. In fact, carrots can continue growing really up until a hard freeze in the ground. And at that point, if you know a hard freeze, which means a prolonged couple of hours under 28 degrees, that's Fahrenheit, then pull them or keep them in the ground, like I said, as ground cover. But if you want to eat them, you want to get them before a really hard freeze. But if it gets frost, you know, as we tend to get frost from November to December before the hard freezes really come in, they're really delicious. The frost actually makes them taste sweeter. A little while after I harvested a cauliflower out of this spot, I dropped in some bush bean seeds. That was only like 2 weeks ago, and as you can see, they're really growing now. And so it's amazing how quickly things will take off in this kind of weather. Over here I had garlic growing, and when I pulled them in the end of July, I just sprinkled some radish seeds in. These cucumber plants that are growing up with the beans are actually still pretty healthy. This time of year, considering how old these plants are, I'm surprised. But they're still producing. And so instead of pulling these to plant the peas in here, I just stuck them in. So as these grow up and get bigger, the cucumbers will need to be pulled anyway. This messy midnight snacker tomato plant was a volunteer. Some of the ripened tomatoes had fallen onto the ground. So that's a tip. As things start turning over, it's not a bad idea to wait until a tomato is overripe, maybe a little bit mushy, and just throw it on the ground and see what happens next year. It really starts getting difficult to keep up with deadheading flowers. So what I've been doing with this calendula, I've been deadheading some of them, bringing them inside to dry to use medicinally, but I've also been consciously letting some go to seed. And then as the seeds really turn dry, just scatter them. And actually here is a tiny borage plant that seeded itself from when it dropped some of its seeds earlier this summer. So it's growing pretty quickly. I'll be doing that to the zinnias and the marigolds too as the season goes on and more deadheads are coming on. I'm just going to scatter them and hopefully they'll seed themselves like these marigolds did last year. Another way to ease into the fall is as things start going out, plop something else in. And it really doesn't take very long. It doesn't take a lot of planning either. So as you can see, this tomato, pretty dead. So I'm going to be pulling this. Wonder if I can do anything with this green tomato. I'm going to cut back some of the marigold that's a little overgrown, and some of the zucchini over there that's got a little bit of that downy mildew on it. And I'm just going to pop in some sugar snap peas. I'm not going to put that in the compost pile. I don't want the disease. I'll clip these flowers and bring them in and put them in a little tiny bouquet. But as you can see, this is a really great place for peas to climb up. I mean, the trellising is here and the poles already, so I might as well put it to good use. I saved these seeds myself from peas that had dried on the vine last year. And I'm going to sow these pretty thickly because I'm not sure if the squirrels are going to want to get to them. Hopefully they're hidden enough and the smell of the marigold will confuse them a little bit. And I'm not that worried about depth and all that because I am pretty thickly seeding this. I'm not really ready to do this today because as you can see, I'm still getting all of these side shoots from the broccoli that I have been enjoying eating, all spring and summer. But what I'm going to be doing when it's time to plant out some of my fall crops is I'm going to put some bok choy in here. I'm going to pull that zucchini plant because I haven't gotten one flower from it, and as you can see it looks pretty beat up. I'm probably going to pull the marigolds or at least cut them back, and I'm going to plant the bok choy there that hopefully will grow on through the fall. Here's another easy gardening tip. I guess it doesn't matter if it's in the fall or whenever you do it, but with this strawberry cart here, there are times when I've missed a strawberry or two and they've gotten overly ripe. They're not pleasant to taste. What I do is I bury them in the soil, and then what happens is get a whole bunch of little strawberries coming up. So one of the problems with strawberries, if you're growing them, is that you've got a lifespan of only about 3 years or so. There's the old tried and true method to propagate your strawberries, which is to find a runner and bury it, and that certainly works. But if you want fresh strawberry plants coming up year after year, this is a great way to do it. There are so many other things we can plant here in the fall. Herbs like dill, cilantro, kale, lots of different kinds of lettuces, beets, sponging onions, which I think I'm going to try as soon as a little bit of space comes open. I might actually do that with where the bush beans are that are on their way out. But I'll probably do that another day because the whole purpose of this video was easing our way into fall, which means don't feel like you're rushed against a time clock. Granted, I've got until October 15th before my first average frost date, but that's been coming later and later. And if I rush to get a lot of these, like for example, my brassicas in, like I told you before, we've got a heat wave coming, they're just going to fry. So instead what I'll do is I'll bring them inside the house and keep them cool. And then, you know, when the temperature's right, I'll venture to plant them out. Last year I did a video called Badia, Planting in September. It was a whole big list of things that I was planting out for the fall, so I'm going to link that after this video, so I hope you give that a look. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, and I hope you subscribe and join our growing community. And from the Ladies Garden and Home, enjoy your gardening journey. Bye! Say goodbye, ladies.